What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel where we're going to be taking a look at our very first Mirri build. This one is actually going to be my favorite build for Mirri in particular, which is a long-ranged bow build, so stay tuned for that. Before I get into it, however, I do want to say really fast that I do have a pretty sizable Let's Play on my Let's Play channel for Elder Scrolls Online if you are interested in that. A link in the description for that channel will be available to you at your discretion. But with that being said, if you're excited for this video, do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, let's jump right into this. So first things first, let's go ahead and get into the skills. And right off the bat, in our number one bar, I like to have a whole thematic bow theme with Mirri. So needless to say, most of it is all ranged bow type of skills that she has equipped on. And the number one slot is obvious with Piercing Arrow, which is a pretty powerful sniping type ability or skill. This is the skill that I like to use to open up fights where she can just snipe somebody from a distance, and it does a pretty good amount of damage at 10,324 with the current setup that I have equipped. The cooldown with the current setup that I have equipped is a 7.6 seconds, range 35 meters, which is a lot. The target obviously is the enemy, and the cast time is 1 second, so this skill again is 100% meant to open up a fight, and it does a pretty good amount of damage on top of that, so this skill is highly recommended in my opinion, to say the least. Moving on to the number two skill, however, is Trick Shot. This one is more of a crowd control ability, however it does come in handy because it does do a decent amount of damage at 5,162 physical damage with the way I have it set up. But the reason why I say it's a crowd control is because it does a conal type of area of effect, and it immobilizes enemies in that conal effect for 4 seconds. So again, it's more of a crowd control skill, and I think it's a pretty good one to say the least, and the cast time is pretty fast at 0.2 seconds. Cooldown, however, it is pretty sizable, but again, since it is just a crowd control ability, you don't necessarily need this to be that quick. So either way, this is a good skill to have equipped, and I highly recommend it. So moving on is our heal at Blood Transfusion. Mirri does a pretty sizable heal because of her passive, on top of what this skill actually does. So she has a passive that does 3% more heals, and on top of the 13,435 health over 8 seconds. So it's a heal over time, and it is a pretty powerful one, if I might say so myself. I did have that a different heal on here before, but I realized that it wasn't taking full advantage of Mirri's passive, so I decided to put on Blood Transfusion since it is a little bit more of a powerful heal for her. In particular, keeping her alive a little bit longer, but it also affects you as well. With a cooldown of 7.6 with the current setup, and a cast time of 0.4 seconds, it is a pretty good skill to have on, in my personal opinion. Moving on, I have Viper's Bite. Viper's Bite, I debated on whether or not I wanted to have this on the number 4 or the number 2 slot, and occasionally I do swap between the two in terms of positions, only because this is a damage over time ability. So it does initially a 5,162 poison damage, and on top of that an additional 15,484 poison damage over 8 seconds. So it does a very quick burst damage, which isn't a lot, but it's a decent amount of damage at 5,162. But where this gets its where you get your bang for your buck is the damage over time at 15,484 poison damage. The cooldown is at 11.4 seconds with a duration of 8 seconds. So you do have a 3 seconds of no effect that this is doing. So 3 seconds really isn't that sizable with the current setup that I have on. So it's not a bad skill to have on, to say the least. It's a pretty powerful, and we're going to be soloing a world boss here shortly. And all I'm going to be doing is maintaining taunt so that we can see exactly what she can do, keeping in mind of course that companions don't really do a lot of damage in whatever setup you have. They do about 7 to 10 DPS, 7 to 10k DPS, so it's really not a whole ton, but it really does add on to everything. So just to keep in mind. Moving on, however, Sniping Silver. There really wasn't any more ranged thematic type abilities that I like to have on my bar that wasn't getting into like magic and stuff like that. So Sniping Silver was hands down the only real ability that I could have had on here that stayed true to what this build was supposed to be. And it's from the Fighters Guild skill line. Sniping Silver does a pretty big damage, physical damage of 10,324 damage with the current setup, but it also has that circumstantial effect that a lot of the Fighters Guild abilities have, which does more damage to enemies if they are undead, Daedra, or werewolf, because of course they're Fighters Guild. So this really is a good ability, and even if you're fighting in a circumstantial type of environment where you're fighting undead, Daedra, or werewolf, you really get your bang for your buck in that environment specifically. But it's still a pretty good damaging ability at 10,324 damage, physical damage, nonetheless. So it's still a really good ability to have on regardless. The cooldown is at 11.4 seconds, so there is a pretty large amount of time that you don't have this active, but it is okay because a lot of your other abilities are pretty good, especially your Piercing Arrow. You're going to be seeing Piercing Arrow a lot because of its short cooldown of 7.6 seconds. And it is also a pretty sizable ability as well in terms of damage. So there's that. That's your main skills, guys. And of course your ultimate, which is a very powerful ability called Impeccable Shot, which is thematically again a bow type of ability, although kind of ghostly and type. It's a pretty cool looking ability. But essentially what she does is that once she fires her shot, she basically weakens the enemy, causing them to take 20% more damage for, albeit a very short 3 seconds, but if she is able to cast this, she's going to be taking 20% more damage on top of the damage that you're already doing. So it's 20% is not a little number, guys. It's a very big number. So for any seconds, any amount of seconds that you're able to have this up, it is pretty powerful to say the least. So having the 20% extra damage for 3 seconds, if you're able to activate it or see it coming, getting a bunch of burst damage right after another in those 3 seconds, you would see a pretty substantial amount of damage being dealt by this ability. But on top of that, if that wasn't already enough, she also does what they call a killing shot, which deals a huge damage of 30,972 damage with the current setup that I have equipped. So this is not just a very high damaging ability, but it also exposes the enemy to more damage. So this ability is a pretty powerful one, to say the least. It does take 159 ultimate, but you see it stack up pretty quick on companion, so it's not really a big deal. Duration 3 seconds, range of course is 28 meters, which is pretty good in terms of distance, and the cast time is 3 seconds. So it's a overall great ability. I don't know, I just love this skill. It's a good one. Moving on to the gear equipped. As I said before on my previous companion builds, I like to emulate companions builds in a similar type that I like to do with my own personal build, right? Which is like a 2-piece monster set and 2 5-piece sets. So I like to go 5, 5, and 2. So keeping that in mind, I like to have the quickened traits on the head and the shoulders, just to bring down the ability cooldown just a tad bit, which in turn would increase a little bit of the DPS because you would be able to cast, or she would be able to cast abilities a lot more quickly. Hence the quickened trait, of course. So that's the first set, is what I would consider the first set, is the head and the shoulders. The second set, which is probably going to be very obvious to most of you, is the aggressive trait in medium, because it also increases damage from the passive in the medium armor skill line, or the skill line. So the aggressive trait is hands down an obvious one here on any DPS build, because you just flat out simply she's able to take to give more damage. So that's probably the most obvious piece about this. She does a lot more damage with this. You could also argue that putting 2 5-piece sets, or everything even as aggressive, would probably increase your damage completely into a massive amount of damage. And I've ran it before that way too, and it does work, and it is a lot of fun. But again, I like to go with the whole 5-2-2 type of build. So quickened and aggressive are my 2 choices for that. And my last and final 5-piece is the shattering, which increases penetration. So I have this on my necklace and my rings, and of course on my bow. So this actually works really good in my personal opinion. Again, because it penetrates armor penetration, and I think every enemy in this game has a certain layer of armor. So having a little bit of armor penetration really does help with increasing overall damage that actually gets through to the enemy. So this ends up being pretty efficient. So my 3 pieces, I'm gonna state it again. It's a 2-piece quickened, 5-piece aggressive, and a 5-piece shattering. In terms of outfit, I have her equipped with the Holiday in Balmora outfit, which is a Crown Shop item if you guys are interested in that. In terms of dyes, I have the Darkstorm Emerald, Marble White, and Telvanni Brown. I think this person looks great. Let me know down in the comment section down below. Let's go ahead and go solo a boss. And there you have it, guys. Our first ever Mirri build. She performed fantastic. As you guys saw, all I did was maintain a taunt and occasionally block, and that's basically all I did. She did fantastic. Again, keep in mind that no companion is gonna do more than 7 to 10k DPS, so the fact that she was able to maintain a pretty good and steady DPS cycle was pretty good, to say the least. I really enjoyed making this video, guys. If you enjoyed watching this video, or if you're gonna go ahead and run this build yourself, let me know down in the comment section down below. Drop a like on this video as well. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.